And welcome back to another episode of the F1 Garage, Saudi Arabian edition. My name's Ted.
I am Jared.
My script says Jeff.
My name is Dylan.
All right, Dylan, what you got?
I got a rant, guys. I got to get something off my chest, and I've been waiting for you to ask me. So thank you so much, Ted, for bringing this to my attention. I'm sure everybody that was tuned into the Sunday race this last time around had some very interesting concerns, questions, just, retorts, or maybe just clear hair ripping out of their hands kind of sensations, because there was something that happened before the race that began that we just got to dive right into, guys. We're talking about, and I don't mean anything against the Saudi national anthem. I'm sure it's a great song, but what we heard was about 13 kids that were basically given a box of instruments about 5 minutes before the start of the race and said, do your best, okay? I know you've never seen anything like this before in your life, but we're just going to ask you to put on something nice and just go at it, okay? We've got a professional director moving the arms, doing everything right. But when they got to singing the song, they were so out of tempo. They were so out of beat. There was like 6 different horns playing maybe just different parts of the song at the same time. I don't know what was happening, but that was painstakingly painful to listen, to watch. So many concerns, so many questions, but it just set such a weird, like, this is supposed to be like your whole country's kind of symbology put into a song. And that's how you present it to the world. I have so many questions, but
what's the symbology?
It was
there?
like symbology was how do we make Tim Cook into an intro song? And that's exactly what happened. So
my favorite part of this was Dylan getting Snapchats from Dylan, like pre-race of of the band, and then it flipped back to Dylan, and he's just like,
it was very,
very
cringy.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Well, it also cut to the drivers too, and like
they were all trying to
try
just
not to laugh. So, group poll, if you guys are aware, who did it worse or who did it better? Fergie during the A finals or this band?
I think this band did it better than Fergie.
Oh man,
This was like, imagine like your 4th grade class when you like had your first recorder concert.
Yes,
That was
exactly.
kind of like the quality of music.
Yeah.
We were-
when everyone, all the parents are kind of like they have to clap, and and like
My child did an
Yeah,
activity.
woo, yeah. Ooh,
That was
That
pretty
wasn't
special.
it wasn't even like the cringiest of the cringe from the
Yeah.
weekend, maybe.
Well, why don't we go through the rest of the weekend?
I think
All right. Let's talk about the race. We're gonna work through it like we normally do, kind of starting with the teams towards the top based on the kind of driver finishing order, and we'll work our way down. The teams were actually very courteous to this strategy of race recapping, because a lot of the drivers ended up 1-2 for their team, so that makes it really easy to work through this. Speaking of, Red Bull with a 1-2 finish once again, although the driver order was flipped this week. Sergio Perez started on pole position and ended in first. Max Verstappen, on the other hand, started at 15th and finished second. It was all around a fantastic showing for the Red Bull team. What do you guys think?
I mean, we were all concerned there wasn't going to be much passing, much action at all at a race like this with 2 significant overtaking sections, but with Max Verstappen in 15th and a couple other people out of place, we'll get to them. It really did make for an exciting Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, I gotta say.
Yeah.
Watching Max just carve up the grid. Honestly, it was just like the way he was passing some people, like Pierre Gasly, where he was leaving the door completely open for him to overtake, but every driver just kind of knew this is not the battle that we are fighting against. We are all understanding that he is going to pass us at some point, and that is the natural order of things. So there was just a couple times where Max, when he finally got up to Lewis to pass him, Max left so much space for Lewis. He's just like respectful. Like he didn't even need to like crouch him or anything to make sure he had the speed to get the exit. Every single person he passed was just like, about time, dude. Come on. It's already eight laps in and you haven't passed me yet, dude. Like, get your stuff together, bro.
You're like, oh, who's fighting you behind me?
Yeah. On the other side of the garage, I thought Sergio Perez also had a fantastic race. Now, Fernando Alonso did get him off the line, which was really fun to see, but he was able to pull it back pretty quick. With Max making it all the way from 15th to 2nd, do you guys feel like Sergio Perez can still be proud of the race he put in, just keeping first for himself?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. It also seemed like Red Bull, quite frankly, they're not even attempting to push the car to its limits, because right now it seems like the engineers over the radios are just giving them time to make, and where they're both pushing each other, they are not going as fast as possible. It feels like.
And even with that, Lewis Hamilton has come out saying that this might be the fastest F1 car ever. And it still feels like there's it still feels like there's more in the tank, even with all of that.
Just glance over at free practice 3, should we, for maybe about a 10-second recap. Max was 0.9 seconds ahead of his teammate. Sergio Perez was like 0.6 seconds ahead of the next team. In a free practice session, Max had almost a second gap to just the next team. I'm like, dude, give him, he's got to start in 15th every race. Because like, honestly, I don't see how we're going to have entertaining races if he's not, because every time that happened last year, it was one of the greatest Grand Prix ever. Anytime Max has been on a place, and we've said this countless times, it's been for a great race. So
I will, one thing I will say, and this is not meant so much as to diminish Max's accomplishment. He drove an awesome race, but more so to give Sergio Perez a little bit more credit. Sergio Perez had pulled away from the pack, and then it got all brought back together with the safety car. So Sergio Perez did work. Pack got clumped back up, which I think helped Max a little bit with Max, getting through the field and stuff. But Sergio Perez was then able to pull away from the field again. And he ended the race over 5 seconds out of Max, and then over like 20 seconds from Fernando Alonso in third there. So yes, Max did an awesome job coming through the field. I think Sergio Perez did better than that time differential even suggests there. This was one of his best races he's ever done. I mean, we heard the team saying it, Christian Horner saying it, but he was on lock the whole weekend, never had a concern. I do want to talk about the fastest lap drama towards the end of the race.
Should we get into that?
Let's get into it. So as the race was wrapping up and it was clear that Red Bull had on lock for a 1-2, we started hearing the team giving the drivers targets to be hitting. Hit 132.6 or whatever it might be. And then Sergio Perez goes on and asks them, okay, I think they told him target 133 for your lap.
Yeah.
And then Sergio Perez goes, okay, what's Max running in right now? And his engineer goes, it seemed a little invasive. And then they go 132.6. And Sergio Perez goes, well, then why are you telling me to do a 133? Like, what's going on here?
Like, we got to give him little crumbs.
It turns out it seems like Max was also given the same instructions and just not following those instructions.
Did you hear that team radio? Hey, JP, the team engineer, told Max like 9 times in a row, hey, Max, can you confirm to set your target, your delta pace to 132? Max, confirm 32. Max, hello, Max, anyone home? Max, please? Max. And then finally, Max just responds, what's the fastest lap? And JP's like, dude, we're not concerned with that right now. Okay, we are
I am
ensuring that you need to make sure that you hit this target strategy. They've been having engine problems like this whole weekend, guys. Like Max didn't make it out of Q2 for problems with his drive shaft, and Sergio Perez had like a slipping clutch at one point. So you got to understand these engineers are telling them a reason why they need to be going this pace. You can't just go 100% all the time. And yeah, Max is just like, okay, well, I care about the fastest lap because it matters in the end in the total standings, but he has just been blatantly disregarding team orders ever since. Well, I wouldn't say it started in Brazil. It started long before that. But when it comes to him against his teammate Sergio Perez,
to
Checo, yeah, it's not looking pretty, but
and Max just can't stand the fact that he would have been second in the driver's standing after week 2. Like that's ultimately what it came down to, because he didn't have the fastest lap in Bahrain. So if Sergio would have had it, he technically would have been ahead in points. So that's his competitive nature.
Is this going to get worse?
Yes.
Or are we just going to have little bits of this all the time?
It's because, well, think about it. Their only competition's each other. So, yeah, of course it's going to get worse. I mean, we talked last season about, we had that fun little question of just how bad, or rather statement of just how bad of a teammate Verstappen is and would be, say, if we were on the grid. You know what I mean? If like we had him as a teammate, he's like he's insufferable. So yeah.
Does Red Bull have any control over what Max does?
I would say
no.
I would say no, because again, it's almost as if like it's kind of like Tony Stark taking over the F1 car.
Yeah.
It's like Red Bull is Max Verstappen. It's not Christian Horner. You know what I mean? So it's his team.
Yeah, and created this monster too.
And I think that this we can define that as that, especially with like his dad. Oh my gosh, I want to maybe talk about that later, but
well, let's talk about it right now. So when Sergio Perez
arrogant and like him not being able to celebrate, this is why I'm slowly like. So you have a lot of people, especially like on the fan boards and everything. They're like, I have a lot of respect for Max because of all the accomplishment he's having. And then now you have the other side of things of saying, I can't believe he's pulling this crap where he can't celebrate. He's not playing the racing game with humility or with integrity. And then you look on the other side of the bigger teams like Mercedes, where we saw it last season, where the first person that congratulated Russell on his win was Lewis Hamilton. So it's like, I just don't get it. I mean, I get it because of the competition and how elite they are as athletes, but I thought this was a team sport, guys. Come on, why can't we celebrate?
Yeah.
It feels like they should be acting this way after the second to last race of the season, not after the second.
Yeah, if we're already here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so what Jeff was referring to is the victory celebration for Sergio Perez when he was jumping in the crowd with his engineers at Red Bull, and he was bumping into Jos Verstappen, who was just kind of like snidely looking over and like not actually like getting in and being happy for Sergio, which is to Jeff's point, it's a team sport. It's a team sport. So
and also Max got second, and he's going to win anyways. Like, just at least pretend to be happy.
Yeah, like he had a great race too. Like he went from 15 to second. Like that's pretty good.
Yeah,
I mean,
maybe not second place is the first place to lose. So
he also from a statistical viewpoint, he also stole Checo's perfect weekend from having a fastest lap to being in pole position and all that, you know,
against team orders.
Incredible accomplishment that belonged to Checo. And sure enough, Checo finds out mid celebratory interview that that Max had done this to him. And
it goes much deeper than that, Jeff. Yeah,
right,
dude. They Like his engineer, after Checo crossed the finish line, he told him, and Max pipped you on the last lap for the fastest lap. And he was like, what? And then he gets down to the cool down room and literally
Mhm.
confronts Max
The cool down was
after the
intense.
race,
Yeah.
right before the podium ceremony. Perez straight up says, Max, like, didn't
Who had
race
fastest lap?
engineers tell you
Yeah.
to go this pace? And Max was just like,
I was at
what? Did you say something,
133,
bro?
132. Yeah.
While Max
Me?
was
Me?
sitting in the first place chair in the cool down room too. Yeah, he went and sat in the first place chair instead of the second place chair. So Sergio had to stand while he was confronting him.
Guys, I
yeah.
want to highlight one other thing here. Remember when we talked about all of the driver controversy we were going to get this season, whether it be the Alpines or the Haas cars or the Aston Martins, and we were all talking about like, all right, which team's going to be the one? Why did we not talk about Red Bull?
Right.
Those are the
just
total
Well, I
myths.
think that's maybe the most obvious would have been that, just because we
Yeah.
ended last season off of that already. You know, like it's still hot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, like Perez and Max were never this neck and neck. I don't think at any stage last
No.
season. Like the first 3 races, like, you know, Red Bull had some problems, but as soon as Max and Red Bull started picking up points again, there was no, like, I don't think there was ever a point where Perez was leading. So
Yeah.
I think Max is just ensuring his victory
Yeah.
from early on, but still, like,
here's the
make it
last
fun for us.
Here's the
Gosh.
last thing I'll say about this is that like it would have been one thing if they had both turned their cars all the way up and they were really going for it and Max just took him on the fastest
Right.
lap. It's something
Mhm.
else if it's like they're both dialing it back and trying to hit targets and Max just
And
sets
one-
a
Yeah.
slightly faster target, knowing that Sergio could also do that time if he wanted to. Like this was just sly.
The difference
But-
is one of them listened to the team and the other didn't.
Yeah. So
One of them's
Sergio stopped
playing for the
listening to your
team, one of
team.
them's
Right.
playing for himself. So yeah.
It's a rough one. All right, let's keep it moving to third place, which is Fernando Alonso with the Aston Martin team. His teammate Lance Stroll, not as good of a weekend.
Come back to reality, Mr. Stroll. Let's go.
He's a DNF.
Hey, but we gotta talk about that lap 1 overtake Lance Stroll
Let's
did.
do it.
Oh
Tell us
my
about it,
god! All right, I honestly think the entire race, the best overtake was lap 1, turn 13, that very long banked corner, the first kind of winding left turn, right after they kind of zigzag for like 40 freaking minutes, and then all of a sudden it's just a long banked turn. That one, Lance Stroll overtakes Carlos Sainz, of course, because Charles all the way in the back still, around the outside of turn 13, in just the most beautiful overtake. It reminded me of Sebastian Vettel on the outside of Kevin Magnussen at Coda last year, just giving it everything, pinning his foot to the floor and making it look, and just he achieved such a beautiful pass.
He
It was
absolutely
just so
roasted
good.
him.
Yeah.
And
And
plus,
it just
we got
proves-
the new we got the new panoramic cabin views too, which is really cool. I like those new angles.
We love to trash on Lance Stroll, and oftentimes it's warranted, but he's also capable of putting in some awesome moves and awesome turns and whatnot. I think he's a driver with high highs and low lows is what we're seeing there. But the driver we should be talking about, a part of that team, Fernando Alonso, second straight podium, which is nuts. Who saw this coming?
Yeah, his 100th podium, guys.
100th
100 podium.
But then what happened to it?
It was then taken away by the FIA.
Oh.
Let's go back to lap
But then
1,
it was
guys.
given back to the FIA.
Why did he get a penalty to begin with? It was his very first, or it was before the first lap. He's lining up to his grid spot, and we had just seen this 2 weeks ago in Bahrain with Esteban Ocon. Parks his car slightly too far outside of his grid box, so his wheels are like touching the lines on the sides. He's not ahead of the line, giving him an advantage or a disadvantage
on the left side.
He's just simply to the side of it, which kind of is, it doesn't make sense why that would be such a big penalty, but for reasons that we won't get into, involving wet race lines and starts that way, in a dry scenario like it was, There's no reason to park outside your box in any direction, left, right, forward, back. So he just didn't have a good start. Gets a 5-second penalty for that. And just like Esteban Ocon goes to serve his time penalty, what happens, guys? Does anyone actually know? I'm pretty sure it was someone like touched the car on the rear side, right?
I do know.
Ted?
It was
jack.
the
It was the
rear
jack.
jack. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's the rear jack.
So they were like about to lift him, I think. So they had it like maybe resting on the car.
I
But
think they
basically,
actually
you
brushed
can't touch
it.
the car
Yeah.
for
So
5
they did.
seconds.
But I thought it was a thing of nobody could work on the car, like the tires or the front wing. I didn't know it would apply to the jack at all. That doesn't make sense to me because it's not really technically working on the car.
It just needs to be
It's
fully
prepping the car.
stationary. It just needs to be
Mhm.
fully stationary before
that's
anybody
so
touches
dumb.
it.
I do
Yeah.
think there's a case to be made for it though, because so you have to draw a line somewhere. I think you guys were posing it, so you can't pick up and start working on it. But there would be a big. Could you then, in theory, if we can have the jack, can you have your pit crew with their hands on the wheels? Can you have the guy with the gun on the wheel? Right? We're drawing the line somewhere. Let's draw it at don't touch the car. It's a very clean line, at least, as opposed to can the guys have their gun already on the lug nut ready to go when 5 seconds is up? Let's draw it. You can't touch it. And so
And
I am okay with the rule. The problem is it hasn't been enforced plenty of times previously, which brings us to what ended up after the podium was taken away from him. It was then given back because the Aston Martin team presented plenty of evidence of how this has not been a problem in the past. What's our read on how the FIA handled this? Do we understand what was going on? Do we agree, disagree? Do we think they're all the dumbest people ever?
I think Dylan's got ideas.
Oh
Dylan
god.
can't
Okay.
contain himself.
Are we diving into this right now? Because
Let's do it.
All right. First of all, FIA. Come on. This has been just a rough weekend. But in terms of Aston Martin, Fernando Alonso, I just want to point out it took them 2 minutes to figure out a penalty was needed after he had incorrectly lined up in his grid slot. No problem. We had a 5-second warning flash on by lap 2. Not even 2 minutes into the race, he knew he had a penalty. Then he goes to serve that penalty lap 19, right when that safety car was coming around. So that means between lap 19 and 50, for 31 laps, the FIA were reviewing this pit stop and then the podium ceremony and the cool down room and all that time in between. And then about 8 minutes after, the entire F1 TV broadcast decided to end and to start wrapping up, showing you the grid slots. Then it popped up. That was, let's see here, 1 hour and 12 minutes later, the FIA finally sent a notice letting everyone know, oh, by the way, I know you just celebrated and drank a bunch of rosé water because it's not alcohol in the ceremony because it's Middle East. And then, chugs a whole gallon of that stuff. They take it away and give it to George Russell. And then the social media posts were on a frenzy. Mercedes was so happy for George. And then Aston Martin decided to rebuttal that because they had 7 different instances and examples in video form to show to the FIA, hey, why didn't you give any one of these 7 people penalties? There's loose kind of wording around the actual rule that says when a car lines up to the grid box, it needs the front jack to line up the car, knowing where it can stop distance-wise. There's actually no wording around, well, if the front person can lift the car, why can't the rear jack? So in the spirit of the rules and the wording, they kind of found a loophole and were able to exploit that. And then they were given the podium again. But why did that happen almost an hour and a half after he served that penalty? Like, the FIA need to find a time restriction between the time something happens and when a penalty can be imposed for it, because what's stopping them from calling a penalty from 2 races ago in Bahrain at this point? They have all the footage they need. Maybe they found something they didn't see at first. That bothers me so much. Why is there no time limit, no restrictions? They can just willy-nilly send something out. They can do it after the race. They can do it sometimes a week after the fact. We saw last year in Kota, a penalty was reversed literally a week later. So that just bothers me so much. And there we have it. Another Dylan Rants brought to you by Red Bull. Thank you.
Is Fernando Alonso going to be on the podium more often than he's not this season?
Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to see those three,
He's fast,
Perez, Max, and Alonso up there. I get the feeling 1 in 3 races, 2 in 3 races this year, unless Stroll can find a good run. But like if Alonso's on the back foot, theoretically, it should be Stroll up there, right?
Mm-hmm. In theory.
In theory. Do I think that's the case? No.
No.
Do
All
we
right, let's
know, like, if it wasn't an Aston Martin, who is the next driver to step up? Like, I still think it's a tie between Leclerc, Hamilton, Sainz. Like, it could be a number of any of those 3 drivers. To me.
that third place goes anywhere if it's not Alonso, which who would have thought we'd be talking that way? But let's move on to the next team. We had Mercedes with George Russell in 4th place and Lewis Hamilton in 5th place. I'd say best they could have hoped for, but it feels very hollow.
Yeah,
definitely.
But I just love Lewis Hamilton is just having the time of his life, and he's driving the worst car of his career, and it's cracking me up. He's just enjoying his time on the track, and it's very strange.
No, he's not.
Yeah, he is.
He's
he hates that they're the team shit, but like he's smiling and he's having a fun time.
I think those are smiles to hide the tears, to be perfectly honest with you.
I think so too.
I think he's at the angriest we could ever see him behind the scenes. A lot of the comments he's making, I feel like it's boiling out a little bit for him.
Mm-hmm.
We saw
like
minor drama,
short in interviews and stuff.
Oh yeah, 1-word answers like, "So how's your weekend been?" Okay.
And he could
is
say
your
it with a
car
smile,
doing
but...
fine? Nah. Are you hoping to pick up some more speed? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what do you want me to say, dude? Like, yeah. So
yeah, there was a little nearly some track drama from them. I forget which laps it was, but there was right after George had already pitted onto the hards. Max just pitted onto the mediums. What am I saying? Lewis races for Mercedes.
Yeah, wow, you got there.
So he had just pitted onto the medium tires and was closing in on the back of George, and was improving on his times. Looked like he was going to be able to pass him, but George didn't seem to want to give up the place, and Mercedes never asked it. It could have been an interesting situation, but that was about the most exciting point of the race for Mercedes, because they finished better than they qualified, and ahead of the Ferraris. So that's at least something. They're tied for second now again.
I guess
got to bring up,
is that the only positive thing we can say about Mercedes right now is, hey, at least they're beating Ferrari.
Yeah,
that's true.
It could be worse, Mercedes. You could be Ferrari.
Yeah.
All right.
Quick thing I want to bring up real quick. We saw a brief black and white flag being shown to Lewis Hamilton. There was an instance when Lewis was basically about 3-4 car lengths ahead of the next car behind. And down the main straight, what any Formula One driver would do is, in a sense, weave their car kind of like left and right. What they're trying to accomplish is breaking the toe so the car behind can't get as much drag, or they're not just plowing through the air and basically leaving a path, a wake, if you will, for the next car behind to just soak up the extra slipstream. And he did it like literally one time, and the FIA gave him a black and white flag. The FIA have been on it, or maybe just maybe they drank an extra 2 cups of coffee this last night or something like that, because they're handing out anything, like every single thing. Like we had a Logan Sargent incident in qualifying, Esteban Ocon last weekend, Fernando Alonso this weekend with grid penalties. We're talking five,
It's like the game
two
of
messed up
centimeters,
pits. Like
too.
there's just
it's weird.
every single thing is coming out under the microscope this year,
Mhm.
and it's good because it's consistent, and I want to see that happen from race to race to race to race, where every lap is being enforced with track limits and things like that. But it just seems like they're getting real nitpicky. I don't know,
Mhm.
just
Yeah.
just a thought.
I'd say you're allowed to be nitpicky as long as you're consistently nitpicky. It's
Mhm.
just the consistency. Either very
Exactly.
harsh and strict with the rules always, or flexible always. It's just got to be one or the other. All right, let's keep it going on to our 6th and 7th place. Both are Ferrari drivers, Carlos Sainz in 6th, Charles Leclerc in 7th. It's good to see Charles at least getting some points this time.
It
also
helps when you
else
have
had
a
to
brand
fight
new
back
engine,
from-
right?
Yeah.
Jared being a disappointed parent.
Yeah. He
At least
tried.
he got points.
He tried really
He did his
hard.
best. He really did.
Charles was already getting grid position penalties for part replacements as of the second race of the season.
Before the second race of the season.
before-
This happened about a week before the race even began. We got a notification. Charles Leclerc swapping out his control electronics. He's on his third one out of 2.
Ferrari, how can this be
Ah!
happening? What are you putting in this car? Is it some Fiat grade like components here or something? Like
It's marinara sauce.
marinara sauce it's running on, and it's not working for some reason. But my goodness, you've got an awesome driver in a car that can be fast. We've seen it be
Yeah.
fast many times. How is it so hard for you to be competitive still? What?
Mhm.
Real.
Why? Just do the things, all of the normal things that every other team is doing. You have the biggest budget. Do those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't have race pace. It's still the same things from last season, even where it's like they show up decent in qualifying and then the race pace just disappears on Sunday. So, yeah, I don't know what it is for them. It's the same stuff that Matteo had to deal with. Yeah,
Have they
I don't
put
know.
up any fastest laps this season?
Mm-mm.
Fastest pit stop. Oh, you didn't say fastest pit. You
No,
said
I did
fastest
not.
lap. Never mind. Sorry.
Mhm.
Sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think
the answer is no.
Leclerc at Jeddah last year did get fastest lap.
Well,
And it sounds
Not that this
very
year.
possible, but no, definitely not this year. Anything else we gotta say? Did either of the drivers have anything cool that they did?
no, there was something that
Mm,
was terrible that happened to Charles Leclerc, because when he was following Carlos Sainz under the safety car, his race engineer forgot to tell him to close the gap up to his teammate, and Lewis Hamilton passed him under a safety car when you can only go a certain speed. And after Lewis Hamilton came out of the pits, Charles Leclerc was kind of backing off to give a little bit of leeway. And his race engineer was just like, "Oh, hey, buddy, make sure you close up the gap because Lewis Hamilton's coming out of the pits."
Oh,
Charles Leclerc
damn.
got the radio message like 15 seconds too late. And he was like, his name is like Javi, or it's like Javi or Javi, probably. It's like, Javi, you got to
It's
tell me that
Javi.
before I come around the first corner. And Lewis Hamilton is already past me, which means all he had to do was just get word saying like, "Okay, make sure we're closing that gap up. That way Lewis Hamilton's going to come out behind you." But
Mhm.
no, they dropped the ball on something so mediocre. It wasn't even during a race for an overtake. They just gave him a position. Whether or not he would have passed him during the races, yeah, Mercedes looks good compared to Ferrari, which
compared to Ferrari.
is kind of a lot in our second race of the season. But I just had to
Yeah.
mention that really quick. Ferrari.
Not looking great. All right, let's move our way down to 8th and 9th. Another team that kept their drivers together, Alpine. Esteban Ocon with 8th place, Pierre Gasly with 9th. This feels like something I think Alpine can be proud of right now.
Mhm.
This is the new best of the rest positions,
Yeah.
which is, I guess, exciting on one point that we've got a new team challenging at the top. Bummer that now there's only 3 positions that can get points for best of the rest.
Realistically, so for Alpine, it's like if no drivers DNF, the very best they could hope for is 8 and 9. So there are 2 spots for Alpine to fit. So anytime they can get double points finishes this season, and especially higher than 8th place, I feel like they can, or at least 8th place, they can be pretty happy with.
That's assuming they're ahead of Stroll, though, guys. We're forgetting if Stroll was in the mix.
Right.
Technically, it's only 9th and 10th for points
That's what I'm saying,
positions.
yeah.
Which is like,
oh man,
Yeah.
Jeff, I mean, so
I'm just gonna say that team drama is gonna start playing big roles with all these teams, but I think specifically between Aston Martin and Alpine. Alpine in my book are still the most like kind of head-to-head combative, I would say. I think there's an argument for that. So if my prediction of multiple team-on-team DNFs comes true, watch out, because Alpine might be doing the most of
the
that.
first,
Mhm.
the first.
Or the
I-
first, yeah.
I think part of the reason that's so likely is it seems like those drivers are going to be on the same part of the track a lot this season.
Mhm.
Yes.
Ocon and Gasly seem to be very evenly matched with their speed there. So I do think that makes it a lot more likely. As I look at this, I go, good for Alpine. They're getting best of the rest. Like, do you guys think they should be proud of that, happy of that?
Yeah, I think at this point in time, yes. I don't think going into the year they would have thought that they should have been up closer to Mercedes and Aston Martin and Ferrari. So yeah, I think where they are, and their main rival is McLaren. So they're doing way better than McLaren.
That's true.
So I think it's about perspective for Alpine a little bit. Yeah, I'm sure they want to be up with the big dogs, but like Aston Martin splashed the cash the last couple of years, and so they
like
kind
that.
of deserve to be up where they are. Where I feel like Alpine isn't quite making that impact.
And so, but I think Alpine's been spending similar amounts of cash.
Really?
Maybe a little bit less, but I mean, they're a full-blown engine manufacturer.
It's got to come
huge
down to
team.
the engine, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Mercedes power versus, I mean, the only car, we can't compare Renault engines to any other team because they only have, Alpine are the only car with a Renault engine, unlike Williams and McLaren, and all those teams have the same engine. So it would be interesting if there was maybe 2 Renault engine cars, kind of just seeing, maybe it's the car, maybe it's the aero, something, but who's to say? I'm just happy there's another mixed in the team in the top 10 there. So yeah, this is gonna be a fun season.
Won't complain about that. All right, let's move on to the final points position with Kevin Magnussen, who stole it away from Yuki Tsunoda towards the end. Kevin Magnussen, 10th place. His teammate Nico Hülkenberg in 12th place. Haas has got to be feeling good about this. I know it's just 1 point, but in a midfield that's as tight as they are, with so many teams competitive above them, I think every point counts right now. How about that fight between Kevin Magnussen and Yuki Tsunoda? Got some good action there.
That was great. It's fun to watch. I mean, low stakes, sure, but I think the best stuff happens kind of in the last 10 laps when people literally are fighting over a point, which that matters so much in the championship standings to these bottom half teams. I'm talking, 6 through 10 teams here. So it's so fun to see these guys literally battle like it's their life on the line for a single point. And meanwhile, Max got fastest lap. Checo should have had it, but now they only have 18 points instead of 19. So
And then
it's just like,
Haas have more money in the game now too. So they are. I feel like Haas, their reputation of multiple seasons in a row of not getting any points, and now that they're actually producing something with K-Mag getting pole position last season, so they're having fun, man. I think that Gunther is leaving the paddock and hugging his guys and hugging the engineers, having a good time.
Just they've made massive step up from last year, and it's really fun to see.
Can I point out one thing about budget? Yeah, can I point out one thing about Haas so far? 2 races, no DNFs.
Yeah. Whoa.
What?
I
Weird.
bet Gene is smiling right now. Yeah.
Gunther
One
hasn't had to
point,
make a
but the
phone
cars
call
stayed
in
intact,
3
yeah.
weeks now. Yeah.
You're gonna get a pizza party in the garage next weekend.
Yeah.
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 No, do you think they've got like one of the like factory like counters where it's like this many
Oh,
weeks
yeah.
without an accident? And they,
Definitely, for sure. Or doors broken.
Yeah.
yeah, right. Or doors broken. Nico Hulkenberg, another week of qualifying pretty well and just falling down the order. Anything that we need to expound upon there, or does it just seem more of the same of just not being able to keep that race pace up?
I'm
Could
pretty
be-
sure he got, a bit of
do I
damage
have it
actually
backwards?
from,
Oh, okay.
like, Hulkenberg started really well on Saturday, had
Yeah.
a great qualifying day, got a bit of damage. Either it was from the Oscar Piastri incident. There was like 3 or 4 drivers that picked up damage. Valtteri Bottas had some floor damage. Lando Norris got it the worst. Of course, he had to completely, fix his wing, but turns out that was still better than Bottas, who had to pit like 5 times. We'll get there, but yeah, just too bad. Either way.
Yeah, it could be a
Just,
situation where he's just reacclimating himself back to the regular F1 grind, too, and that they're being damaged, that kind of sews up the race a little bit. But maybe it first couple of races this year, Magnussen has some better race day results just because he's more used to it, or he's a little bit more acclimated than Hulkenberg. But I don't think it'll be that long before we start to see some good Sundays from Hulkenberg. And if the Haas can stay as close as it is, like it has looked good in qualifying sessions with Hulkenberg, so it seems like it has a lot of pace. Could be a fun team.
Nice. All right.
Yeah.
Let's move on to next in the order here. Yuki Tsunoda, who spent a lot of the race in 10th place, ended in 11th, unfortunately. And then we had Nick DeVries down in 14th. The AlphaTauri doesn't look too hot, but I feel like Yuki was making the best out of it.
Yeah, second race in a row. It feels like he's producing fairly well in a car that probably isn't that good. He's definitely showing up his teammate. Like, I think his Nick DeVries is not pulling through in the same way that Yuki is, which is either a testament to Yuki or it's a scathing review of Nick, that he's not able to keep close with Yuki. But I do think that it is that Yuki is actually driving very well this year so far. I think this was a big question mark year for him, and so far it seems like he's doing very well with the equipment that he has.
Yeah,
it's still a big question mark year for him too. I don't think it's close to over. I still think his contract's on the line, and he has to outperform Nick first and foremost. But he's got to secure some more points finishes here. Yeah, for real.
I do, I think, agree with you, Ted, that it does seem like 2 races in, granted, it does seem like he's taken a step forward from where he was last year. And if he's able to continue at this level of consistency, I think we could see him getting a lot more points and maybe having a chance to keep in his seat for another year or so.
Yeah.
Rock and roll. Moving on down to 13th, Zhou Guanyu for Alfa Romeo and his teammate Valtteri Bottas down on 18th, being the last driver to finish, a few laps down from the rest of the pack. What is going on there?
Guys, real quick, these guys are both on my fantasy team. This hurt a lot. They did really well last weekend. They got great points. They're chalking it up to how this track doesn't suit their car as well as Bahrain did, and I think there's a lot more to the story that we don't know. I think, these drivers both struggled for reasons beyond our understanding, something to do with the car itself, how sure they have Ferrari engines, but Alfa Romeo make their own gearboxes, and they were having just trouble, just lack of grip, too much drag, a lot of scientific terms being thrown at us. But at the end of the day, they just didn't have pace. So too bad.
Yeah. Too bad.
Too bad.
All right.
That's all I got to say.
Moving on down to an even more too bad, I think. McLaren.
Mm.
Oscar Piastri, 15th place. Lando
Pretty
Norris,
good.
17th place. It's not looking like it's getting any better.
Mm-mm.
No. So they're
Just
attempting to bring massive updates and upgrades to Baku. So everybody needs to keep that in mind. But as of now, they are the worst team easily on the grid.
man.
Yeah, it seems like it, and they just seem like it's problem after problem, and I don't know what happened because this team seemed to be a well-run team
Mm-hmm.
last year evenly, but now they can't get the car right. They can't get a race together right. Their drivers don't seem to even be performing that well given the car. Is there something we're missing? Do we think the car is faster than it's looking and there's a problem? Do we?
No.
Yes.
I think it's the
No.
same exact
Oh.
cars as last season.
Guys,
All right.
they had to, both drivers this last race had to pit the first and either second or third lap.
Mm-hmm.
Oscar Piastri kind of just barely nudged into Pierre Gasly's Alpine, and his whole front right end plate ripped off and shredded like 3 other cars underfloor until it got to Lando Norris. And then that completely took out, it was like his front suspension, front like wishbone. It wasn't terrible, but it knocked off a part loose in the front. So they both had to pit, and then they were just stuck because the safety car came out shortly around lap 19, and they were just stuck in a DRS train because there was no gaps. The field was spread and then bunched back together. So then they were just stuck, and
Like
it was just...
The thing was, is Piastri was on for a good weekend. He made it into Q3 in qualifying.
Yeah.
What did he start? 9th, right?
He had a really good
9th,
start.
something like that.
It was just behind like Lewis Hamilton. It was crazy.
Yeah, and so the place that he started at, it was just that little piece of damage, like you said, Dylan, that really ruined his race. But he looked like he was in a shout. So like that's where I'm like, yeah, maybe McLaren really isn't that far off, and some of these upgrades will help, but their driving did not help them this weekend. Like I think it was more of the driving that let them down than it was the machine that let them down this weekend, which is a battle on both fronts for them right now.
Yeah,
I think it's
they're coming.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I just think it's a Daniel Ricciardo karma situation, straight up.
So you're saying
the team on the way out.
So with that extra $18 million, McLaren could have invested more in their car instead of pay off his contract?
I learned the other day it's 24 million. It's not even 18. It's way more.
Jeez.
Like, it's crazy.
My God.
I hope it
That
was
makes
worth
it
it.
worse than better. Yeah, I thought you were going to say it was only 5 or 10. No,
it was 24.
It was more.
Rough. All right, let's talk about the last team that we have to cover here. Williams, Logan Sargent finishing in 16th place, and Alexander Albon with a DNF. I don't think I saw them on the screen ever, except for Albon DNFing for a little bit. Do we have anything to say? I thought Williams would be good this week. They're supposed to be fast in a straight line.
Logan Sargent was on track to probably make it into Q3, if I'm being honest. He had a rocket ship in that car, set like a really good lap, and then turns out there's a tiny piece of the track that you're not supposed to drive on, which is just ridiculous, because if it's like basically gravel, a Formula One car is going to go on it. But here at this track in particular, if you nudge the left-hand side coming out of the final corner before the first, basically the start-finish line, and if you drive over on the pink part, your lap time gets deleted, and he got sent to the back, tried to go out for one more lap, hit the first curb in the first corner, and then broke his suspension, and then couldn't even finish his first qualifying. Damn. So right off the bat, Logan was doing so well, and then just took such a hit of confidence from that final lap, and then started so bad. Once again, most of these drivers, after the safety car came out, bunched up in a DRS train. Saw some good last kind of 10-lap battle between him and the two McLarens.
How
for 16th place.
When did he go out? When did he go out?
Let's see here. I don't even remember.
It wasn't
It was,
even-
it was after Stroll, of course, right? So like lap 16 after that.
Sound like that. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Cool.
It was just there wasn't like a safety car or anything. It wasn't like a
Mhm.
Right.
stop of any flow of the race by any means. But
he did another lap with the bad brakes after reporting the bad brakes, which was an interesting take, but okay.
it was funny. Like he was like, I have no brakes while he was going wheel to wheel driving with cars through corners. And it's just like,
and then was saying that as he drove past the pit lane one time,
yeah.
did a whole other lap, and then finally
Mhm.
decided to call it. So
Yep.
cool,
That
Alex.
was bizarre.
How bizarre,
right.
how bizarre.
So we've made it through the race and the standings. What are some other kind of big talking points from the past week or so that we need to be highlighting here?
Dylan, go for it.
Should we talk about Angela real quick? Quick shout out to Lewis
Let's do it.
Hamilton's personal kind of
Physiologist.
Physiotherapist.
physiologist.
Physiotherapist.
Basically,
Physiotherapist.
his go-to person
Her-
when it
just her
comes
physio,
to
his physio. So it's like
every-
extra,
yeah. But every single driver has a physiotherapist, right? Like you said. Or some version of that. Like Carlos Sainz has his cousin Carlos Sagnoro, and we've seen him a lot in Drive to Survive. And for Lewis, it's Angela. And for the last 100 years, Angela has been next to Lewis's side for almost every single race in, race out, race weekend, practice session, qualifying session, flights across the country, across the world, winter testing, like all of these things. This wonderful individual that has been so loyal and so wonderful. And we just had to give a proper send off to Angela.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence and helping and assisting Lewis in every way you can. So
We'll
whether
miss
it
your
be
bright
back
and
to
shining face.
PT after a race or giving acupuncture because of the porpoising last year, like she's been through it thick and thin. And we've seen some great photos of Lewis kind of throwing her in the Monaco Harbor after a couple wins. And there's some great action shots out there. So
Is she the most famous physio / physical therapist?
There's something about her having more Instagram followers than some drivers. So yes.
So definitely.
No, there was a video of her from the last week walking down like the spiral staircase of the Mercedes like big bus, the team bus.
And I know you would love that one.
Yeah, she's carrying one of Lewis Hamilton's bulldogs, and I have a bulldog, so I love bulldogs, and so that always makes me happy to see. But seeing how much emotion she had when she was in race to race with Lewis, like cheering on every victory, crying over every DNF and bad result. She was there in his corner every step of the way. So yeah, you will be missed in the F1 paddock.
Yep.
Yeah, realms just for sure.
I think another thing for us to kind of comment on from the happenings kind of surrounding the race, safety car. We touched on it briefly. There was a safety car in the race. But what happened was, as Lance Stroll was exiting the race, he did a great job actually timing his when he was exiting the race, and was able to pull his car off the track and actually get it down into kind of tucked into a service road
Seriously,
behind a barrier. Really good job. That's what the drivers were coached to do. So the car is out of the way of the other cars in a very safe place for marshals to get to. But the FIA still decided to throw a full-blown safety car instead of a virtual safety car like they could have here. Why did they do that? Like, was that good, bad, in between?
Do you want to know why? Like the real reason?
It's because Max wasn't in second place yet.
Yeah, exactly. No,
we
actually
need
got
Max
a
to
report.
catch up.
We got a
Tell us
report
about
from
what
the
actually
spokesperson.
happened, Dylan.
Basically someone anonymously mentioned from the race director's headquarters, in a sense, that they launched the safety car because they didn't have enough cameras on the track actually depicting where Stroll was. So they were actually unsure after he pulled off. So they had no idea. They were in the dark.
Disappeared.
And he disappeared. So they were so concerned. And guys, being safety, being the number one precaution, maybe start with a virtual safety car. We've seen that almost every time a real safety car comes out is a virtual safety car gets deployed. Ironically, there's no safety car actually on the track being deployed, but 30 seconds to a minute goes by, and then they realize, wow, there's a ton of debris. We need marshals on the track. Let's pull out a full safety car. No, they just went for the full safety car because they had no idea where Stroll was. And the cameras finally caught up. Like it took one camera, like a 360, like turn around to look on the ground upside down at an angle to see difficult. Stroll had already parked off the track.
There's some dude that was just facing the wrong way, and they're like, "Hey, Larry, we need you to turn around.
Huh?
More,
Huh?
yeah, there."
What?
But
and then it's fine.
Just
very
very strange. Like usually they're a bit better about dropping a virtual safety car or some kind of yellow flag to begin with, but no, they were so quick to call a safety car. And you know what? In that instance, good for them for keeping safety as their priority, because I don't know if you guys watch the free practice sessions often, and I just want to touch this really quickly. These corners are, even though they were expanded a little bit for better optimal viewpoints, when there are cars going 3 times the speed of other cars driving around you, and you have to position your car off the racing line to ensure that you don't get hit, it is so dangerous to see the cars at such high speed with cars going slower. Imagine driving on the highway without any lines guiding you on the road, and you're going 50 to 100 under the speed limit, and cars are just whizzing past you. These guys have got to keep making sure their surroundings are always clear and all that. So the FIA were probably just like, I can't see him. Safety car, go, go. And that's just kind of how it went. But in hindsight, it completely ruined Checo's race. The dude was pulling away an almost 9-10 second gap. Safety car brings every single car together. It's to the advantage of every single car except for the race leader for a safety car to come out. So he really got pinched there. And I don't think Max would have even been within 5 seconds had there not have been a safety car. So
yeah,
FIA,
Dylan,
FIA.
I do think you raised a good point. We are always very quick to criticize FIA for unsafe or seemingly reckless decisions. So for them to make a decision that's maybe a little bit overly cautious, I'd choose that over the alternative. So as much as it seems silly in hindsight, on a high-speed street circuit, I'd rather see them play on the side of safety there and call an unwarranted safety car as opposed to alternative, and not calling one on an actually dangerous scenario.
Don't worry, though. They'll make up for it by doing some stupid shit later on in the season.
Yeah, it'll be Monaco, and they just won't call a safety car at all. Green
like,
flag.
Should be a red flag to restart. And then
I will say, I just had a thought. I'm actually thinking they put a full safety car out because they needed a marshal to come onto the track to grab that piece of debris that lost from Oscar Piastri's car that was on a completely different part of the circuit. My only thought is, well, maybe they didn't need a safety car, but they just had to ensure the cars bunched up enough to a point where someone could come out and get that debris. I forgot there was a 2-foot chunk of carbon fiber resting about 4 feet off the racing line somewhere. Not quite where Stroll went off, but that actually might be. That's too logical. That's too logical. Yeah.
The FIA should hire you to spin for them. I think you could really sell them on covering up some of their bad decisions.
Yeah,
that would be the silver lining there. Sure.
Mr. Captain Hindsight.
Yeah.
The chief hindsight officer.
Yeah.
Position. All right. Any other big talking points we gotta discuss here from the past week or so? No, I think we've got things covered here. We had a boring race on a cool track, and maybe a few fun passes. Congratulations to Checo. That wraps up our check-in on the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix.
The curse is real, guys. Checo's gonna win. Max Verstappen lost the first race. It's happening. It's happening.
It's happening.
Woo!